Yeah.
All right, going live.
All right.
It's a fun series. I mean, I realize like a good portion of it's all
Oh, of course.
made up.
This is Hugs, Bruise, Hilda, Rebel Shell, Rock
It's
Clubster,
fun.
Dicks and Stones of the DC Roller Girls, and you're listening to SLZE Sports.
The most amazing, sensational, dramatic, heart-rending, exciting, thrilling finish in the history of college football. You believe in miracles? Yes! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Live from the basement capital of the world, it's SLZE Sports.
It's one of those things that sucks you down into this giant tornado of awesome, bringing you the sleaze to the stellar and everything in between.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! It's a home run!
With your hosts, Coach Scott, Zoe, Dean Ash, and Sweet Lou.
I don't believe what I just saw! I don't believe what I just saw!
It's time to tear apart the sports world and...
And welcome to SLZE Sports, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. I am Coach Scotty, as always, joined by none other than Sweet Lou and D Nash. Gentlemen,
Let's go.
let's go.
Going with the vibes. Yeah. Oh, that's you know that's the whole. You didn't see the whole NFL commercial where everyone's screaming, "Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!" It's on the explanation, man. Exclamation. There you go.
Exclamation.
Yeah. I'm excited. Exclamation. That's right.
Are you
Keep
excited?
it on the side I take.
You're excited? Are you excited?
As
Anyways,
excited as I can be.
we have plenty to talk about tonight. We are eventually going to get to our MLB West discussion and preview and make our picks there in a bit. Obviously, we have tons to talk about in the NFL and Major League Baseball world of trades and free agent pickups. And, whew, it was a busy week. And before we get there, a couple other things to talk about, obviously, that's going on right now. You have the men's college basketball tournament playing their Sweet 16 games, two of them which are going on as we speak. Arkansas versus Gonzaga is going on right now, with Arkansas still up by 5 points with about 2:39 left. Might be a little lagging there, but it's about right. And Villanova is leading Michigan right now with 6:40 still left in the second half there. I'm sure.
Yeah, Michigan was looking bad in terms of high percentage shots. Was peeping that game before I came to Longhorn with you guys, and yeah, I would not be surprised if they lose this one. But actually, both teams were shooting poorly.
Mhm.
Michigan was just shooting worse.
Well, Villanova's pulled ahead by a bit now, by about 9 points or so.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, that's definitely been. Villanova's had a more comfortable lead, but quite frankly, Arkansas's had a pretty nice lead for the good portion of the second half, and they just nailed a 3 to go up by 8 with, and Gonzaga called a timeout with 2:08 to go in the half in the game. So we could be seeing our second number 1 seed go down.
And talking about teams that went down, let's talk about our horrid March Madness picks for a moment, if you will. Which, if you go to,
well, let's go. Let's say this for first. 2 number 2 seeds have gone down, 2 number 3s,
1-1,
and 1 number 4. A number 1. So I think everybody's brackets are looking pretty spectacularly bad.
Agreed. But just, if you go to our website, SLZesports.com, SLZesports.com, click in the bottom right, there's a picture of March Madness. Just click on it. It'll take you to our brackets for this year.
Don't look at it.
You don't have to. If you want to look at something, look at maybe D Nash's West bracket. D Nash and Lou both have pretty solid West brackets. Actually, overall, the West brackets were pretty good for us up to this point. I only had 2 of the Sweet 16 teams in, where you both had all 4 Sweet 16 teams in the West. So you guys look pretty clean there. Obviously, in the East, it was a little different. Kind of the top half of the East is clean for all of us, and that bottom half is a mess because of Kentucky going down, because of Virginia Tech going down, and those were all sorts of picks we were agreeing on. And not to mention for Lou, I mean, in the second round, his national champion went down.
First round.
Oh yeah, sorry, they lost to the 15, didn't they?
They lost to they lost that
Seton Hall
Peacocks.
Not Seton Hall, St. Peter's.
Well, it is because the word on the street is that Shaheen Holloway is headed to Seton Hall, his alma mater.
His alma mater, yeah.
Yeah, because for some reason, even though the Seton Hall coach in 7 years won exactly one NCAA game, he got the job at Maryland. So Seton Hall needs a coach, and there's word that Shaheen might be heading there. But yeah. I lost my national champion literally about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock on the first night of the tournament. Nice.
Absolutely. Spectacular. And Lou is the college basketball guy, just so you know.
Yep.
Anyways.
But the funny thing was, like, the best regular season game I saw all year was Arkansas versus Kentucky. It was a phenomenal game, well played both ways. It was a 2-point game, and I'm like, well, these look like two really good teams. I'm going to pick one of these guys to go all the way. And I will say, and he has to believe me, if Arkansas had been in a different region than Gonzaga, I probably would have picked them as a surprise Final Four team. But when they got put in the same region as Gonzaga, I'm like, they can't beat Gonzaga, can they?
You know what's been what's been surprising to me is, and I love to pick on the SEC, but this in general, SEC was so strong this basketball season, and in this tournament, outside of Arkansas, they struggled, Lou.
Yeah, Tennessee went down in the second round as a 3 seed. Auburn goes down as a 2 seed in the second round.
LSU as a 6 seed in the first round.
LSU loses as a 6 seed in the first round. Yeah, they had a lot of high seeds.
Auburn lost in the second round.
We can and probably will make fun of the Big Ten also with 9
Oh, yeah.
teams and only getting 2 to the Sweet 16. But the Big Ten had a lot of 8, 9, couple 11 seeds. They had a lot of lower seeds. So in some ways, a lot of them were expected to lose. But so they only have 2 teams in the second weekend of games. But the SEC and Big Ten definitely are the losers of the first weekend.
So our East are pretty much the same as I said. You both had pretty clean West when it came to the 16. The South, a bit different again. We're all a mess in the South. In fact, Lou lost his Final Four team from the South after the second round as well with Tennessee. So you only had 2 Sweet 16 teams there. D had 3. And so D was the cleanest when it came to that, but we'll see how that rolls out, because I lost one of my Elite 8 teams in the first round when Michigan beat Colorado State too, so mess. But if you want to see a whole lot of red marks, just look at the Midwest.
It's like looking at the Elephant Man. Don't look at him.
It's crazy. That's where I lost my first Final Four team early. Now, you both have Kansas, who's still alive, but D has nobody but Kansas left in the Midwest.
Elephant Man, don't look at him.
Yeah, Iowa losing in the first round.
I guess Lou only has Kansas left
in a 5-12 game, and then Auburn in the second round really took out a lot of people. And then Wisconsin, people had Wisconsin, and Wisconsin losing to Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
Which I give you a little credit there, Lou. Even though you had them losing the first round, you said you had the issues with Wisconsin and thought they'd have problems.
Yeah, I didn't like them. I just had I had 2 wrong teams, because I had Colgate beating them, and then I thought LSU was going to play well for their young coach, and the LSU Iowa State game was very good. It was very close, but Iowa State pulled that out, and then they pulled out the win over Wisconsin. So. Yeah, but kudos to the 2 conferences that have 3 teams playing in the Sweet 16. The ACC, who everybody thought was horrible all year,
pretty much.
Carolina knocked off a number 1 in Baylor,
Mm-hmm.
Duke, and surprisingly Miami beat number 2 seed Auburn.
Yeah, and then Duke won that big game against Michigan State against Hall of Fame coaches that I know you loved, Lou. So
yeah, but Michigan State was overseeded. They beat a 9 or a 10 seed. Good for them.
I know Coach K is no Jim Boeheim, so But
the funny thing is how good of friends they are. But they have a good game coming up later. I feel like that game is going to be like a carbon copy of this game. You have an excellent offensive team in Duke against one of the 2 or 3 best defensive teams in the country, like Arkansas is, which is exactly how Texas Tech plays basketball.
And with 47 seconds here left, Gonzaga has it to 4, but they're forced to foul at this point.
I think they're having a foul to get the ball back, which is so. If Arkansas can make free throws, then they should be able to seal the game. If they can't make free throws, they might open the door.
But hey, this is why it's March Madness, right?
Exactly.
The other conference that actually has 3, I just want to give credit because I gave credit to the ACC. The Big 12 has 3 teams with Kansas, Iowa State, and who's the other Big 12 team that made the second weekend? I was going to look at our sheets, but our sheets have somebody. Texas Tech is Big 12, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So Texas Tech. Oh, they missed a free throw, so Gonzaga has the ball down.
It's March Madness.
Yeah. And then I know we have lots of stuff to talk about tonight. The other, I watched a lot of basketball this last weekend. The overwhelming theme was the officiating was horrible in the first weekend, just all over the place. There was lots, and there were stories written on lots of outlets about how bad the officiating was in many games. The most probably glaring was that North Carolina Baylor game. It was just awful. You can think whatever you want about the kid getting kicked out for the elbow on somebody while rebounding a ball. I thought it was a borderline flagrant 1 foul, but to call it a flagrant 2 and kick the kid out was ridiculous. And I swear if it had been a 2-point game, they wouldn't. But it's a 25-point game, so we'll kick the kid out of the game. And then after that, even it was clear. What gets me is it's because of these pods. Basically, so many teams get to play home games, and the refs they get caught up in the crowd.
Right.
They call the game the way the crowds want. The crowd is rooting for an underdog. Underdog gets the calls. If they're rooting for a home team, the home team gets the calls.
See, that's why I'd be a bad.
I'd be a bad. Arizona TCU game. Arizona got several calls at the end of the game because the crowd was all on their side because they were basically playing a home game. Baylor got all the calls. They're playing in Fort Worth. And I realize they do the pods because they need to get fans in the stands, but the refs have to be stronger. You can't just call the game based on the way the crowd is yelling and screaming.
See, that's why I'd be a terrible ref there because I love the underdog. So, can't root, but.
But it wasn't always the underdog. Baylor was the number 1 seed, and once that kid got kicked out of the game, they started pressing, but they were fouling on almost every play, and they weren't calling anything. But then every time they drove the ball, and Carolina breathed on them, they got the foul call. It was just so. They shot 20 straight foul shots.
Wow.
Not successfully in the game, but 20 times a person went to the line. It was a Baylor person going to the line, not a Carolina person. I don't care what's happening in the game. There's no way in any college basketball game played between 2 teams of equal strength that should happen. But whatever. We got a lot of NFL and Major League Baseball to talk about.
We got a ton. It looks like. Sorry, I was actually trying to pay attention to that end of that game there. Where Gonzaga.
I think it's still 4 points.
4 points. Under 30 seconds. Gonzaga just got the ball back, thanks to a turnover when Arkansas was trying to get a defensive rebound, and they missed the shot.
Yeah, Timmy missed a
looking good for Arkansas with 21 seconds left. The one other thing I want to mention too is because I know how Lou hates if I jump to NFL too quickly. And we don't talk about NHL much on here. And those actually, obviously, they have I'm going to put in air quotes here, trade deadline because it doesn't really exist in the NHL because they're allowed to trade after the deadline. It's weird. But they still call it a trade deadline. And there was actually the big trade came up with outstanding goalie Marc-Andre Fleury, who is with the Blackhawks and traded to the Minnesota Wild for a conditional first-round pick. So that was a pretty big news in the NHL for him to be heading to the Minnesota Wild, of all teams.
I think the Wild made a couple of big trades at the deadline, but I don't follow the NHL anymore like I used to, so I couldn't even tell you what's going on.
I don't follow closely enough, but obviously they're trying to make a bit of a run with Andre Fleury, because if you remember that first year when the Vegas Golden Knights had their big run, he was the goalie that was the ace in the hole for them. He was the one that was unprotected. Was it Boston who didn't protect him?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Sorry, the Penguins didn't protect him, so the Golden Knights were able to draft him.
He won a couple Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, I think.
I think so. But yeah, so, that's pretty big news from the NHL world. Obviously, we don't have to delve into other things too much. Another thing, though, out there, after 113 weeks of being the number one player in women's tennis, Ash Barty, the Australian, has decided to retire from the sport.
Oh, wow.
25 years old.
25 years old. I mean, she's made a ton of money, don't get me wrong, and won her majors, but that shocked the tennis world that she was retiring this past week.
Well, anyone retiring at the age of 25 is shocking.
Man, wouldn't that be nice?
Was that, Coach?
I said, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, to retire at 25? Yes. I mean, I don't care what you're doing. If you're retiring at the age of 25, at anything you do, it's going to be shocking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think she's leaving a sport, a profession that leaves her in the middle of the public spotlight, which is not a comfortable place to be for a lot of people.
For a lot of people, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're retiring from high school at 25, then that's the only place. Well, no, it's still shocking there too, because it's like, damn, you still in high school at 25? Oh man, okay.
I'm retiring.
Yeah. I mean,
from.
I think it goes on. What we've seen with Simone Biles and a fellow women's tennis player. What is her name? Osaka. It's
Naomi Osaka. Yeah.
Naomi Osaka. I think it's a mental health. I mean, we didn't talk about it. There was an Ohio State offensive lineman that retired from the sport.
Wow.
While he was still in college because of mental health issues. I mean, yeah, it's shocking, but I think I read a little bit about it that she said when she won I think her first major was the U.S. Open in 2019, that she talked to her coaches then about walking away.
Mm-hmm.
So she won at Wimbledon, and then she won her own country's Australian Open just back in January. And yeah, I mean, some people just aren't built for the pressure cooker that we put these athletes under these days, especially in individual sports like tennis and golf.
Oh yeah,
I guess it's a lot. It's not like she's not going to live her life and do many things. Who knows? She could go into commentating or coaching or something. But
so I also want to bring up one other thing we didn't talk about last week, because I know we've had a discussion on the show before about knowing the true greatness of a particular athlete means to have a rule in their sport after them, because they've created something that no one else in their sport has before. Well, in the new MLB and the MLBPA and the new contract they've signed, there is basically what has been called the Shohei Ohtani rule. Obviously, everybody knows Ohtani. He was the MVP last year, spectacular hitter and pitcher for LA. Well, this rule now states that when starting pitchers are hitting in the lineup, so in that DH spot, they can remain as DH even when they're replaced on the mound. So they can be taken out of the game on the mound, but continue to hit in the DH position if they've been hitting there.
Interesting. Okay.
Which, of course, is now necessary because we now have universal DH everywhere.
Yeah.
Right, and obviously Ohtani is such a weapon that they want him hitting. So, yeah. But, so Ohtani pretty much gets a rule named after him. And jumping right in, what was that, Lou?
No, I was just going to say they actually backtracked on one of their rule. That I felt like just came out in the last couple of days, and they said they were going to, other rules that had been in place they were going to change. They got rid of the 7-inning doubleheaders like they had during the COVID year and last both 21. But they said they were going to get rid of that extra inning rule where they put a guy on second base automatically to try to shorten extra inning games.
They put it back.
They said they were getting rid of that, but the day they announced the Ohtani rule, they also announced that for one more year we're going to keep that 10th inning second base rule
Oh,
in
wow.
place.
I hate that, by the way. I'm not a fan.
Not in the playoffs, though. Just for regular season
Still
games.
not a fan.
Well, I mean, you don't go to a lot of games either, do you?
But if I can sit there and get my second bag of peanuts, I'm happy. No, I understand how long it can be, but I don't know. It's just, to me, it's kind of a weird rule, and I get it. I get its purpose. I'm just personally not really a fan of it.
I mean,
they say they are going to phase it out, but I guess for some reason they decided to keep it for one more year, which makes you wonder if they won't keep it forever, but who knows? But they are getting rid of the 7-inning. I actually kind of like the 7-inning doubleheaders, but who knows?
And D, I know what you were about to ask. I have been to a game that's gone. I think it was.
No, see, you should let me finish.
So go ahead.
Because don't they stop serving liquor after the 7th inning?
Oh, that doesn't bother me.
Well, I mean, you unfortunately, I keep forgetting.
No, I mean they actually usually they shut down all concessions around the 7th inning.
Yeah, so if I'm there 15th inning, I'm like, dude.
Yeah, usually all the concession people start shutting stuff down pretty late in the game. You can't even get a hot dog after you do the 7th or 8th inning, but whatever.
So by the way, it's official. Arkansas has knocked off number 1 Gonzaga, 74-68. Huge win for the Razorbacks as they knock off the number 1 in the West.
Yeah. 2 number 1 seeds have now gone down.
Yeah. And there goes my champion.
There goes your champion. So I'm the only one with my champion left so far.
Who'd you have, Coach?
Arizona.
Arizona?
Yeah.
And they don't play. Do they play tonight or no? No, they play tomorrow night.
They play tomorrow.
They play tonight, 9:59 tonight.
Oh, they play along.
Oh, that's right, because they're after the Villanova. That's right. Villanova, the winner of the Villanova-Michigan game plays the winner of. I got to tell you, Houston's good. Houston is really good. Obviously, they made a run to the Final Four last year, and they retooled. Obviously, they don't have the same guys, but Calvin Sampson, when he's not cheating, man, he's a good coach.
So let's talk about the major.
You're not cheating, you're not trying. Huh?
Let's talk about some of the big major.
Exactly right. Hey, and it's Houston, right? But okay.
Well, at least he didn't go to a massage parlor. So let's talk about the big moves that happened in Major League Baseball. And again, when these free agent and trade moves, we're going to get to them. I have them in order of how they happen throughout the week. Or in some cases, if a certain team, like my Finns themselves, made a number of moves throughout the week, I kind of just put them all together with when the first move came out that they made that was big. So just like this one with the Philadelphia Phillies, talk about a team that keeps spending money. We talked about that just a few weeks ago. Well, a player that you mentioned just a week ago, Lou, Kyle Schwarber, found a new home. As Schwarbs signed a 4-year, $80 million deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. So a big deal for Schwarber to go to the Philadelphia Phillies. And then later in the week, they also signed Nick Castellanos to a big deal also, which I know I have here. I just can't find it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's even a bigger one. I mean, Schwarber, not the best in the world, might be seeing a lot of time at that no universal DH position. But Castellanos had, kind of a, Cincinnati had those 2 great stars that broke out last year with Jesse Winker, who ended up, I think, going to Seattle this offseason, and then now Castellanos. So I don't know how the Reds are going to retool, but I mean,
a 5-year, $100 million deal for Castellanos.
Yeah, a big contract. I feel like it's an arms race in the NL East. You got Steve Cohen, spending money like a, drunken sailor on shore leave up there in New York for the Mets. Like everybody's getting money up there. So you got to deal with that. The Braves obviously have won that division 3, 4, 5 years in a row now. They still got a hugely solid team.
Well, Lou, and let's not forget, outside of these big signings too, they do have the reigning National League MVP on that squad as well.
Who is the reigning National League MVP?
It's your boy. It's Bryce.
Oh, that's right, Bryce.
Wow,
I
had no idea.
I forgot that. Right, he beat out. Right, Soto finished second, but So I mean, our 2 teams coach are a distant 4th and 5th in that division now. I'd say.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I still question who's going to pitch for the Phillies and the Mets.
You and me both.
The Mets need Lindor but we're going to do the East in 2 weeks, right? We're going to do the West tonight, Central next week and the East in 2 weeks. So
Correct.
we'll talk a little more about. But yeah, it's an arms race in the East.
Then after we do the East, I think that's when we do our NFL mock draft of only 24 teams. So yeah, then another big move that happened, Zach Greinke signed back with his old team. He went back to the Kansas City Royals, signing a 1-year, $13 million deal to go back and pitch with them when he had been pitching with Houston beforehand. And Houston's been have free agents that have gotten away from him.
Not been able to hold on to guys. You're right. Obviously, we're going to talk about the
Very
huge
soon.
signing here in a second.
The next
one of the biggest name.
Right. And we will be there in just a second, like I said, just going in order of how they came out. Another one, the Chicago Cubs went and got a Japanese star that other teams had been looking at, Seiya Suzuki, and signed him is he an outfielder? Yeah, the outfielder to a 5-year, $85 million deal to come play in the States. So,
Okay.
Cubs got him? Yeah, no, he's supposed to be the next great Japanese import.
Yeah, he went to the Cubs.
But I feel like when you're talking about big numbers, it's either the Dodgers, Cubs, Yankees, Red Sox.
And let's talk about the Dodgers. So the Dodgers trying to make some noise and bring in someone big again. Well, we talked about the big Matt Olson get for Atlanta last week. Well, here's where Freddie Freeman ends up. The Los Angeles Dodgers give Freeman a 6-year, $162 million deal to come play. The only thing I'll say, and I'll let you guys have free reign because I know D is, shaking his head about that. But I just, to this day, I don't understand how Atlanta, and kind of to Lou's point last week, like Freeman has been the heart and soul of that Atlanta team for years. They finally have the big one, win the big one. They need, they could have kept him and offered him a decent deal. Instead, from what I know, they didn't really talk to him much, and it just soured, and they signed Olson or traded for Olson.
And then signed him to a big long-term contract.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how someone who's your heart and soul and has been that big of a player for you, not to mention finally helped lead you to a World Series, you do that.
Well, maybe it wasn't a heart. Maybe it was a liver.
My only thought, I'm going to let D go, is that Olson
You still need a liver.
Well, you could live with one, but they just looked at him as disposable. Well, they did look at him as disposable.
Apparently. What was that, Lou?
I was just going to say Olson's probably a little younger, but but it didn't sound like they were making a big move anyways. So you really wonder what was going on behind the scenes there. I think Olson became option 2, but it's not like they had the Olson move. If they had made the Olson move before the lockout, then I would have been, they made a concerted effort that, there's this asset out there that's, 4 years younger than Freddie. We can get him for the same amount of money that Freddie's probably going to cost us.
No, you're right. He's 5 years younger, Lou.
Yeah, so why don't we upgrade to somebody who's got more years left on him? But not the Dodgers, gave Freddie 6 years. The rich get richer with the Dodgers, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you called it last week.
And then, you go to another team who doesn't usually spend all that much money. And the Colorado Rockies go and bring Chris Bryant into play and give him a 7-year, $182 million deal.
You know who had something to say about that was Nolan Arenado. Because, he famously left Colorado last year, before last season, in a trade and signed with the Cardinals because the Rockies didn't want to pay him. The Rockies are consider themselves a smaller market team.
Right.
Not showing the want or desire to spend a lot of money. No, he had something I think he released a couple social media posts, Nolan did, basically, which boiled down to WTF. What the heck? And you got to wonder what Chris Bryant's doing. You played for a Cubs team that won a World Series. You went to the Giants who, were in the NLCS last year. He got traded at the trade deadline last year. So you played for a winner that was on the cusp of, winning a championship.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to go play for a team that, really hasn't done much and hasn't shown. We're going to talk about the West tonight. And my guess is, there's 3 teams that are on the challenge for the West, and there's two teams that are going to battle for last place, and it's kind of been like that for 4 or 5 years in the NL West. I don't understand it from either end. Why are they giving all that money to this guy when they don't want to pay anybody else? And why is Chris Bryant want to basically go finish out his career playing for a team that's probably never going to win anything ever again? It's puzzling.
Well, do you think he would have gotten that money elsewhere?
Well, maybe. I mean, there is always that, you take the most money where you can go. So, I mean, I guess you can't, blame the guy for that. If they're, if somebody's offering you, 180 over 70 and the best offer you're getting somebody else is, 100 over 4, then yeah, I guess you go take the most money you can get your hands on. So maybe that's why Bryant's going there,
Plus, you can up those stats in Colorado.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't, it's just funny that Colorado all of a sudden, goes from not paying another heart and soul guy like Nolan Arenado, top 5 guy in the league, best defensive third baseman in the league, arguably the best offensive third baseman in the league. Could have been your Cal Ripken, could have played 15, 20 years in one place and possibly been a Hall of Famer in Colorado. You just send him packing, less than a year ago, and then you turn around and blow the market on a guy who's, again, I don't know how old, but Bryant's not young. He's over 30.
I say Bryant's not young. He can't be young.
I think he's over 30, so.
Yeah, he could have been the next Todd Helton.
And I mean, I know it's 2 down the list here, but they let Trevor Story, their best player, walk in free agency. So you're not going to pay Trevor Story, but you're going to go sign Chris Bryant.
Well, Chris Bryant is 30.
Yeah, he just turned 30 in January.
I mean, I know I'm jumping ahead, but how much did the Red Sox give Trevor Story?
I had the other story up, so now I have to find the Trevor Story deal.
I'm sorry. I know I jumped ahead, but I felt it's obviously because Story's leaving the team that Bryant went to.
Right. Trevor Story got a 6-year, $140 million contract from the Red Sox.
But he literally got less money than they paid Bryant, and my thought is that Trevor Story's 2 years younger than Chris Bryant.
That I think D Nash is looking at.
Actually, I'm not.
And by the way, Villanova did finish off the Wolverines. Obviously, Michigan had a great tournament as an 11 seed. Made it all the way to the Sweet 16, but Nova just a little too much for them, and they move on to the Elite 8.
Story is 29.
Yeah, so he's not that much younger, but still, I don't know.
But yeah, so the Red Sox get the big get there, but then as we alluded to earlier, and the Astros losing another huge asset, Carlos Correa goes and signs with the Minnesota Twins. And get this, I mean, we talked about big money, but he signed a $105.3 million contract over 3 years.
Wow.
A 3-year, $105.3 million contract for Correa.
Oh, I mean, he was probably the biggest. I mean, when you saw the list that came out in November, he was pretty much on almost everybody's number 1 free agent. This was the biggest name out there. And for the Twins to, outbid, Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Dodgers, the usual suspects, is a pretty big deal. I mean, the Twins made a lot of moves. I mean, whether or not you think they were good moves or bad moves, they send Josh Donaldson to the Yankees, but they pick up Gary Sanchez. They, they're trying. I mean, the Twins, were top of that division for a couple of years, and last year they dropped all the way to last place behind even the Tigers and the Royals. So they definitely aren't happy being in the bottom of that division, and they made a move to move up. And it's probably a good thing for Correa to get away from that, ridiculousness. Definitely him, Bregman, and Altuve will always be linked to the trash can banging whatnot. So,
right. Well, those were the big moves I had for Major League Baseball. There are a bunch for the NFL as well. So moving right along, we're going to start with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, what they probably thought was their bigger move first, early in the week, they picked up Chandler Jones. They signed the former Pro Bowl Arizona Cardinals linebacker / D-end. So Chandler was a big get. However, of course, then later in the week, they then went and made a blockbuster trade and traded with the Green Bay Packers to bring in Devontae Adams to play, and they gave up two, including their first round pick this year, but I guess it's their first and second round pick this year, and gave Davante Adams a 5-year, $141 million contract, which is about a little over $28 million a season. And since it's the Raiders, let's also keep in mind he has to commit a felony before October.
Nice.
I thought that was just the rookies.
Well, he's a newbie.
There's a difference between a newbie and a rookie, though. But he's going to play with his Fresno State boy and Derek Carr.
Yeah, they played at Fresno together.
So, it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what that offense is going to look like now with the addition of Davante Adams playing alongside Hunter Renfrow.
Darren
Waller's there. Deshaun Jackson is also there as a wideout too. Then of course with
Jacobs
coming out of the backfield, and wondering exactly how this offense is going to look now with Josh McDaniels. So he had some pieces to play around with in a very stout division with the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, actually, are the Chiefs still considered to be stout now, Lou?
I think so, but obviously they lost a huge weapon, which I don't know we're going to probably get to in a second. But my question with the Raiders, they signed Chandler Jones, but the biggest problem with that team for the last 4 or 5 years has been that defense has been awful. Like ever since they let Khalil Mack go, and like now you don't have any money to pay the defense.
True.
Like, I had a couple friends that don't understand why the Packers are letting Davante, and they don't understand why the Chiefs are letting Tyreek go, but it's like there's only so much money to go around.
Very much. That's why it's called a salary cap, Lou.
Right. And when you hear that, like, if the Packers had given Davante that money and the Aaron Rodgers his money, they'd be chewing up like 37% of your cap on 2 guys.
Yeah.
You got to have 53 guys on a roster, and like in theory, everybody should get about 1.9% of the cap. So if 2 guys are taking up 37, and I assume the same problem in Kansas City with Mahomes and his contract. So this is why everybody wants a quarterback under his rookie deal. This is why there's 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 10 in the draft.
Yeah. And you're absolutely correct there.
Everybody wants to use that Seattle Seahawk. I feel like everybody's still playing copycat off of their, when Russ was a rookie and won the Super Bowl.
Well, with a little tweak down, because the Cincinnati Bengals didn't do it with defense; they did it with offense, and they're doing it with 3.
I just mean the idea that you don't pay your quarter, you get a superstar quarterback, but you're not paying him any money because he's under a rookie contract.
True.
And as soon as you got to start paying him, the team falls apart, which is what happened in Seattle. As soon as they had to start paying Russ, team fell apart. As soon as anybody has to start paying, Kansas City, as soon as they start paying, they've still been able to hold it together, make championship games, but haven't been able to make the promised land because, they don't have quite as much money to spread around.
Well, I don't know if that's the reason why necessarily Kansas City hasn't made it. You also take a look at the overtime rules that's bit them twice.
Oh, yeah.
In the past 4 years.
They've done a pretty good job of managing it. But, and I realize that, Tom Brady's the Antichrist and everything he's ever done on planet Earth has been for the destruction of mankind. But, the fact that he was the 8th or 9th highest paid quarterback all those years in New England might have had something to do with why they were, able to create a dynasty.
Yeah.
You can't be the number 1 or number 2 guy in salary and still expect, your team to be able to field a superstar lineup with the salary cap. Like I realize math is hard. But I make a joke about it because the salary cap is. Teams literally hire 2 or 3 guys just to manage that one aspect of their team. But I don't mean to jump the gun on the Dolphins, but why are the Dolphins able to sign this big name tackle, and why are they able to sign Tyreek Hill, and why are they able to pick up guys like Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert? Because Tua's under a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Which, yes, we will get there shortly.
I know, I jumped the gun on your Dolphins. But
well, I'm sure because you were ranting.
It's just the economics of these teams, like what's going on in Green Bay, what's going on in Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's not simple, but it is you can definitely see the trees through the woods here of what's going on with some of these teams.
Oh yeah.
So then the Bills made a couple moves to try to improve themselves as well. They picked up linebacker Von Miller from the Rams, and not only brought him in, they gave him a 6-year, $120 million deal for Von, and also brought in O.J. Howard, the tight end, in on a 1-year deal as well.
Well, I mean, they got to keep pace with what's going on in the rest of the division as well. Now, I don't know if those moves were made necessarily before or after Tuesday. But, I mean, there was a big move that happened in the division that day.
No, that was actually earlier. But, yeah, so then it gets us to the Dolphins, because what was funny to me, and being the Dolphins fan, seeing on the boards, and I think I told you guys about this a week or even 2 weeks ago, that how silent the Dolphins had been was driving some of the fans mad. Just the fact that they had all this cap space. They were number one going into free agency and seemed to not be doing much to begin with. One of the early moves that they made that I thought was a solid one that doesn't get a lot of love, but I've said before, I like my fullbacks. I've said that, that I love how they help the team. And truthfully, the Dolphins haven't had a good fullback in a ridiculous amount of time. They brought in Raiders fullback Alec Ingold, who's actually one of the best fullbacks in the league. So that was kind of a nice pickup to help the running game. And then also to help the running game, they went out, and as you mentioned, Lou, went out and signed Raheem Mostert to a I think a 1-year deal as well, to bring him in. And again, extremely fast running back if he could stay healthy. But yeah, that was a 1-year, $3 million deal for Mostert.
He also knows that offensive scheme too.
Right, he knows the offensive scheme, and he's got a ton of speed. And the way you saw San Francisco run, where they run a lot of short routes with running backs, with receivers, and just use that speed. I mean, heck, I'm forgetting the name right now.
When he was healthy in 2020, he was a stud. But he definitely had some health problems. But
what's the stud wide receiver in San Francisco right now because of his speed? Yeah, Debo. And look what they did with Debo. I mean, it's definitely that type of offense. But yeah, at that point, I liked the moves, but it just didn't seem like they were doing much. Then, as it broke later in the week, they were going after the top left tackle still out there. After, I know I didn't get to him yet, but La'el Collins had got signed already in Cincinnati. So the top left tackle out there to get the biggest weakness point of this bad offensive line has been its tackles. And they signed Teron Armstead out of New Orleans, and more importantly, Arkansas Pine Bluff, to a 5-year, $87.5 million deal with 43 of that guaranteed. I kind of felt like for a stud linebacker, left tackle that is, it wasn't crazy bad either. I mean, I feel like we've seen worse contracts than that. But then I thought that was a solid deal, and then of course, it happened really quick. The morning of was when it was starting to be reported that apparently Tyreek Hill was asking for a trade, because I guess what had happened from the story that I've heard that has come out now, Tyreek was offered a deal by KC, but knew he could get more because of the contract restraints that they have at this point. Even though it's crazy to think Tyreek would leave Kansas City just on the basis of...
Wasn't it also because of Devontae's deal?
Well, yeah, because I think KC was prepared to make him the top paid wide receiver in the league, but then Devontae's deal was above that. So at that point, KC allowed him to seek a deal, and even though initially there were some other teams, it came down to the Jets and Dolphins, and from what I was reading too, the Jets actually offered first and more, at least overall, but he chose the Dolphins, which makes me feel good just because screw the Jets.
I heard they offered the Chiefs more draft picks, but then they didn't offer Tyreek as much money. The contract wasn't. Then his agent, his representatives went to both teams and said, well, if he gets traded to you, how much money we get? And then the Jets' money offer wasn't as much. Right. I don't think the Jets have as much money under the cap as you guys did.
And that was a 4-year, $120 million deal they gave to Tyreek, which basically goes for the rest of Tua's rookie deal, as you were mentioning, because there's an option in there as well. But yeah, they extended him with 4-year, 120, and that's beyond this year. Because this year I think it's only a $9.1 million or $9.3 million hit on the cap, because of the contract that he is under right now. And then they gave up the draft picks, as was mentioned. This year it's a 1st, 2nd, and 4th, and next year a 4th and 6th. But it's kind of like I was saying,
but it's not your first, right? It's the other first, isn't
it? It was.
Did you guys have two firsts?
It's the only first we had this year. We had traded our first during the draft.
Okay. Because we have your first, right?
Correct. Because of the trades that went all over the place. Because we traded back and then we traded up again. But yeah, we have 2 firsts next year. But for this year, yeah, we trade our one away. But again, we're picking 29th. It's not exactly the deepest draft this year, and I've said I didn't know what the Dolphins were going to do.
Is that whose pick was that? Who
at 29? That was San Francisco.
Oh, it was San Francisco's pick. Okay, because they lost the championship game, right?
So I didn't mind that. I mean, the second round still a bit, but it kind of seems like they're filling the roster up as they wanted anyways. And then a couple 4ths and a 6th. Bring in Tyreek. I mean. He's a stud, and that just thinking of the speed out there, though, with him and Waddle, not to mention you also have Gesicki out there, and you have Parker out there, and you have, as you mentioned, Mostert. They also brought in Chase Edmonds, who can catch the ball at least real well out of the backfield, as he did for Arizona. There's a ton of speed. If McDaniel could make it work, it could be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it can be. It's going to be interesting, though, because I don't know if that necessarily will be enough for them to overtake that division. And the 2 questions that I have, well, one, is anyone going to be necessarily surprised at the fact that Andy Reid got rid of Tyreek Hill based upon what we've seen of him throughout his entire coaching career in terms of him cutting bait on valuable or I should say talented players at the right time? And then with that front office that Kansas City has, and this being considered a very deep wide receiver class, that they probably won't take a wide receiver at some point in the first round. And then also, we know that Andy has been capable of playing without throwing a touchdown to a wide receiver throughout an entire season anyway. So I'm not necessarily shocked that he wasn't going to be willing to spend but so much on Tyreek, but it's going to be interesting to see how this team is going to be capable of surviving this upcoming season. And then 2, can Tua throw the deep ball? Because at some point in time, if he doesn't throw enough of them, Tyreek's going to get frustrated.
Yeah, but if you think of the San Francisco game, I think the only team in the NFL that had less deep balls than the Dolphins last year was San Francisco. And Jimmy G in San Francisco. And that's because of the offense they played. And now, again, if your thought is that you can run all these crazy routes underneath and you have the speed of Waddle and the speed of Tyreek Hill along with the speed of Mostert and whatnot, you can make things happen. It could be the hope that they get space and you give them space and then they could do amazing things with that speed. But like you said, it'll be interesting because I don't even know how they're going to handle this, but it sounds fun. So,
yeah.
So bring it. Anyways, moving on with
you know what else sounds fun?
What's that?
Drinking a whole lot of liquor without eating food.
Speak for yourself. All right, so
oh no, I won't do that no more. That was a 21-year-old mistake.
The Pittsburgh.
I know we have a lot more to talk about, but are we gonna talk about what's left of the quarterback carousel? Or I guess we'll talk about that after we talk about the Ryan trade.
Well, I was gonna talk about that next week during the hot seat. But
okay.
Or we can leave it
this week. That's cool too.
There you go.
No, let's do it next week on the hot seat. That's a good idea because it's just poor Jimmy G and poor Baker. But
so then the Pittsburgh Steelers, to make their defense stronger, which is absolutely what they don't need overall, signed stud linebacker from Jacksonville, Miles Jack, to join their squad.
What do you mean they don't need to bolster up that defense? There's another QB in that division now that got stopped.
I don't feel like you can ever have enough defense, right?
Nah.
But I'm just saying their offense is the big question right now. And
yeah, you're right.
Just like you can't have enough cheese, you can't have enough defense.
What do you mean that their offense is a question mark? They have Mitchell Trubisky as their potential starter. Or Dwayne Haskins.
Maybe they'll trade for Baker.
Maybe.
So then the Buccaneers, after Mr. Brady decided he was coming back to play football, Chris Godwin got an agreement for an extension, got a 3-year, $60 million deal from the Bucs, which included $40 guaranteed when it seemed like Chris Godwin originally might not be there anymore. And as we had mentioned,
did they tag Godwin first?
I think so.
I thought they did.
So this was just a negotiating with the guy after they tagged him.
And then also the guy who sent the nice letter to Bucs fans that he was leaving, Leonard Fournette, re-signed with the Buccaneers on a 3-year, $21 million deal to stay in Tampa.
After I heard he had a visit with the Patriots, which is kind of funny that he went.
Oh wow! Okay.
Visited the Patriots and then signed with the Bucs.
So then the Rams, let's see, the Rams signed Allen Robinson. They brought in the Bears stud wide receiver for a 3-year, $45 million deal to add to what seems to be crowding Rams receiving core, even though it does look like OBJ may be on his way out.
I don't know. I heard they're still interested in re-signing him as well.
Well, I also heard that there's a possibility and he's open to going back to Cleveland now. So, we'll see.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean? The guy.
and I know you put it down the list because they're in order, but obviously because of the team he was traded from, the Rams then traded Robert Wood.
Right.
Yeah.
To the Titans.
Right. The Titans got Robert Woods in that trade, which, I mean, are you replacing Julio Jones with Robert Woods?
That I think is an upgrade at this point in his career. I mean, Julio's been hurt so much. Yeah. I feel like this was the first time Robert Wood ever got hurt in his career. He's been a pretty steady guy.
So also with the Rams, by the way, 40-year-old Andrew Whitworth finally announced his official retirement. The 2-time All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowl, long-time NFL player, retired. So as I always say, is Whitworth a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see his resume. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So, Lou, for you, your Eagles released Fletcher Cox.
And then re-signed him. So I think that was just a salary situation. I think they needed to. I think they had to release him to be able to renegotiate his salary at a lower number. But yeah, and we signed Boston Scott. Not that anybody cares. But
woo!
Yeah, we have been very quiet. The only really big signing we made was and I always get it because there's 2 Hassans in the league. There's Hassan Reddick and there's Hassan Ridgeway. We signed one of them. So, but that was a couple weeks ago.
And then
they've been very quiet.
Then the Cleveland Browns get their quarterback. They bring in Jacoby Brissett to Cleveland. Oh, what? That's not it? They did sign Brissett to be the backup, of course, to big move that he was going to Cleveland. He wasn't going to Cleveland, and Cleveland's the best option. He's going there. Deshaun Watson gets traded finally out of Houston to Cleveland, and as we figured it would be, what a take it was for Houston. But before I even mention that, they did extend Deshaun Watson's deal as well, giving him $184 million over the first 4 years of his contract, and it was a raise of it was $48 million, which is a raise over the $136 million he was originally scheduled to make. That was about a $12 million a year raise that the Browns gave him.
But isn't he also only going to make $1 million in this next year, so that he doesn't lose any money when he's suspended?
Mm-hmm.
You heard that part of the little.
Yeah.
And again, the whole thing with he wasn't going to Cleveland, he is going to Cleveland, much like the Tyreek situation, I heard this was all agent driven.
Yeah.
The agent went around to all those teams that were left on the list and saw who was going to offer the best amount of money after the trade, because I maybe all the teams were basically offering the same draft pick package to get him with Houston, and he basically got to call his shot, maybe a little bit like Tyreek, insofar as whoever was going to give him the most money and also make it the friendliest contract in terms of the suspension was where he was going to say, that's where I'm going to, because of the no trade clause he had, that's where I'm going to waive my clause, trade me there.
Right.
And Cleveland's the one that came up with the big bucks and also said, yeah, we'll pay you the least money next year because we all know you're going to be suspended for probably 8 games.
And they sent in the deal the next 3 first-round picks they have in 22, 23, and 24. And they sent their 3rd round pick in 23 and their 4th round this year, as well as their 4th round in 2024 as well. So a total of 6 picks, 3 of them being first-rounders to Houston.
But Cleveland got like a 5th rounder thrown.
6th. It was a 6th.
A 6th to make them feel. I feel that's like pat you on the head and make you feel good. And,
oh yeah, 6th round pick.
You just mortgage your future for a despicable human being who's you already know isn't going to be available.
So is Watson the next great?
Half the season.
That sounds weird. Is Watson the next great Browns quarterback? That just sounds.
You really didn't say that out loud.
I know. That's why I was laughing.
I mean, with his ability, and then with the weapons that he currently has on that offense, if they're capable of playing to that level, he most definitely could be. I mean, you know what I mean? Who is he competing against?
Right.
Really. I mean, in the history of the Cleveland Browns, who else is he competing against to potentially become the next great Cleveland Brown QB?
Yeah.
It's a very short list. But it's one point that I want to touch on just briefly, and I touched on it a little bit last year, is the NBA-ification of the NFL, where these players are now starting to call their shots, and it's been players of positions of value, where originally was QB. It's now starting to bleed over to wide receiver. What position do you think that this might start to become an issue with in the later years? Well, and I say next year to be exact, because it seems like it's starting to spread every year. They tried it with running back. It's not necessarily working, but it's working with quarterback and receiver because of the way that the game has, well, I guess, evolved now into being very pass happy and very score friendly. So I'm trying to figure out who might be next in this I'm going to call my shot and make a ton of cash wherever I go type situation.
Pass rushers?
You gotta stop them. Yeah.
I mean, were you asking a question there? I wasn't sure.
Oh yeah, I was asking what position might be next.
Yeah, I know left tackles get a lot of credit, but I don't feel like they'll completely be able to call their shots. They get traded around a lot, or free agents like Collins, but other than quarterbacks, people say the most important position is your left tackle, your pass rusher, and your shutdown corner.
Mm-hmm.
So for those two, shutdown corner or your pass rusher.
So let's see. We already mentioned the Titans trading for Woods. So the Chiefs did trade for Juju Smith-Schuster, who becomes their number 1 now, to a 1-year, $10.75 million contract.
I sent you that one this evening. They also signed Valdez-Scantling.
Oh, right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Late this afternoon or early this evening. So to also bolster that now pretty depleted. And I guess they still have Hardman and McCall Hardman and
well, and Kelsey obviously, but
obviously tight end, but at the wide receiver. But obviously you do not ever replace a talent like Tyreek Hill. He's considered by many the fastest guy in the NFL, but I mean, Andy Reid is not a dumb coach. He's a very good coach, and Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent, but you definitely think it's got to take him down a peg. Though I did read somewhere that their odds, their Vegas odds, literally stayed exactly the same. Like, I don't understand what those numbers mean. Like, what is plus 135 and plus 150 and all those things mean on odds? But it stayed exactly whatever it was. It stayed exactly the same after the trade for the Chiefs. I'm sure yours changed quite a bit, Coach. But
it moved up a bit, yeah.
Right.
So then also, let's see, the Panthers re-signed DJ Moore to A 3-year, $61.9 million deal, including $41.5 of it guaranteed. So, big contract to retain DJ Moore in Carolina. As I briefly mentioned before, too, the Cincinnati Bengals signed left tackle from Dallas, Lael Collins.
Which they needed.
They needed it bad.
They need bad offensive line help. You are correct. So that was a big signing for them. Then, yes, there was the Indianapolis Colts trade, as you were alluding to before as well, where they traded for Matt Ryan from Atlanta and gave a third-round pick for Matt Ryan.
That's amazing. That's all Matt Ryan gets is worth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what, 38? Yeah. I mean, he's still a viable QB, and with the right team and in the right circumstances, is a team that can most definitely attempt to make a run for a championship. But did you see who Darius Leonard made a plea for to come join him in Indy?
No, I didn't. Who is it?
Well, I mean, Matt Ryan used to toss TD passes to him before, and he's on the market. That would be one Julio Jones.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I guess Indy could use the help at wide receiver.
Yeah, they could.
But it's okay, because then the Falcons signed the replacement to take over the reins, and, I'm sure the future of the team when they signed to a 2-year deal, Marcus Mariota, to come in and kind of play quarterback for Atlanta.
You see the same way you laughed about that? They said, we're going to go ahead and end up taking a QB next year.
Do you think that means they wait a year and pick a QB next year because everybody thinks next year's draft is so QB rich?
Probably.
Or do you think that means
I think it depends who's there. Year? I mean, when does Atlanta pick?
They pick top 10, don't they?
Yeah.
They didn't trade away any.
I mean, considering quarterbacks aren't seem to go in the top 5, I would think if the top guy, if they're looking at him, whether it be Pickett or whether it be dude from Liberty that I'm Malik.
Yeah, Malik Willis.
If one of them are there and they're high on them, why not get him? And you have Mariota, a veteran at least at this point, signed to a 2-year deal. You don't have to start him right away, but there may be that option to get him some play earlier than they need to. But who knows? I don't. I would think you get rid of your franchise quarterback means you're going to look for your next franchise quarterback. But we'll see how it plays out.
That's what I thought. I mean, obviously none of us think that Marcus Mariota is anything more than a stopgap.
Right.
But I mean, he's gonna get a chance to start.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they draft a Kenny Pickett and the guy just is so good in camp that he, gets a starting gig. But
his hands.
But again, Dee's gonna have us talk about that more next week, so we're not gonna.
Oh, yeah.
Then also, Atlanta did re-sign Cordarrelle Patterson to a deal to play, I guess, every position possible.
Well, you saw his tweet, right?
Year. Oh yeah.
Dee sent his tweet around with the kid, the little kid winding his arm around, like got to warm up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pretty funny.
And then New Orleans did re-sign Jameis Winston as well, since they were hurting for a quarterback, giving him a 2-year, $28 million deal, which is $21 million guaranteed for those 2 years.
Okay.
It's a lot of crab legs, right?
Wow. I mean, he doesn't have to steal them this time, but
he can easily.
Unless he just wants to do it for the thrill.
But obviously, if he can stay healthy, like Jameis is still a.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and your starter's only putting up 14 on the books. Why not?
So I don't know how much Lou is going to be paying attention to Monday Night Football this year, considering 2 of his losers are both in this.
I like Troy. I think Troy Aikman's a very good announcer.
Color guy.
Yeah, announcer / he's the color guy. Yeah, I mean, I have no problem listening to Troy. I don't think they should let him do Dallas game because he's a little biased on those games, but the other 31 teams, he's fine.
But Joe Buck, I know you are thrilled with that signing.
Yeah, I don't. Well, the other side of the Joe Buck thing is not only does Fox now no longer have a number 1 team to do football, they no longer now have a guy to do the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, Fox owns the World Series rights for years and years to come now. So everybody's like, well, is Smoltz still going to be the guy? Who's going to do the games with Smoltz? Like, who are they going to bring in? I mean, I'm sure there's only, probably 100 guys lined up to do it. And it's been holding that seat forever. I'm sure there's plenty of guys good enough to do it. But, I mean, there has also been an NFL broadcasting carousel we've seen.
Yeah.
With those guys going to Fox, with Al Michaels' contract up at NBC. Amazon grabbed him. As Coach sent around to the three of us the other day, Kirk Herbstreit was signed to do the Amazon games. I'm not even sure if everybody knows that Amazon has the exclusive rights to the Thursday night package
games,
now.
Yeah.
You'll only be able to watch that through a streaming service. But Kirk is still going to do the Sunday night college games. He's going to do double duty.
Oh wow.
He'll do Thursday NFL on Amazon. He'll still do Saturday night college on ESPN.
Get paid, young blood. Get paid.
Which I assume means he'll still do game day on ESPN.
As far as I know.
And then that means Tirico moves up, which I think has been the plan for a while at NBC to move him up. He did the studio show for Sunday Night Football, but he moves into the booth with Collinsworth. Now we can only get rid of Collinsworth. We'll be all set.
Exactly. I agree with that. So an interesting comment, we mentioned St. Peter's earlier in the run they're having as the Cinderella team, as the 15 seed right now. Interesting part of that, St. Peter's is the first team from New Jersey in the Sweet 16 since 2000. The team in 2000, do you know who that was?
It was Seton Hall.
It was Seton Hall. And do you know who the starting point guard on that Seton Hall team was?
It was the current head St. Peter's coach, Shaheen Holloway.
Shaheen Holloway. It's just
because I have another little ditty like that for you.
Yeah.
Between coach and player. So, what's the Hunter Dickinson, the big center for Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever he scored like 57 points in those first two games. It was the most points that a Michigan player had scored in the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament since 1994. You know what player that was that scored that many points in the first two rounds of the tournament in 1994? Kind of along the same lines, guys.
Yeah, but I said, Coach don't know. It's Juwan Howard. Stop playing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's his coach, Juwan Howard. That was kind of the same type of factoid. It was coach and player. Yeah.
Factoid. Then also I wanted to
Nugget. I'm sorry, we call those nuggets, don't we?
Zoe calls them nuggets. So I did want to say a farewell. I know it didn't hit you guys the same way, but someone who built up the women's basketball program at Florida State, Sue Semrau, is stepping away and retiring from the program. She's the all-time winningest overall coach at Florida State, 200 wins and counting in the ACC, 8 straight wins over Clemson, which was a school record. She also was a 3-time ACC Conference Coach of the Year, 2-time ACC champion. She made the Sweet 16 3 times and the Elite 8 at least once, and was also the AP Coach of the Year 1 time in women's college basketball. So congrats to her as she's going to retire and step away from the game in a program that she seriously had built on her own. And moving on from that, real farewells and rest in peace. First, I have for you a former San Jose State running back, John Packer, was 24 years old, was found dead this past week, and there's not a whole lot of information overall on that yet, but a sad state, of course, whenever a young man goes away. And sadly, for the most part, that's how these all roll, because next, the Towson Tigers star running back Kobe Young also passed away at 23 years old this past week. Towson, that's HBCU, isn't it? D?
No.
No?
No, there's 2 other HBCUs in Baltimore, but that is not one of them.
Yeah, Towns is Baltimore, but it is FCS.
Well, I know it's FC. I don't know what I was thinking of then. I must be thinking of something else. But sadly, that as well. Then also this one, real youngster, Massachusetts star high school star running backs James Galante was killed in a car accident this past week at just 18 years old. He had already signed with Denison University, which is a D3 football program. Had signed to play there, and sadly passed away in that car accident. And then, of course, one that Lou made sure to get to us as well, and obviously broke all over the place. A long-time ESPN correspondent, commentator, everything. The professor, John Clayton, passed away at 67 this past week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible. Since such a constant voice, on ESPN for so many years.
Mm-hmm. So did I miss anything, fellas?
I don't think so.
Neither do I.
Then we are SLZE Sports. SLZE Sports.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at SLZE Sports every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. right here on Facebook Live. Without further ado, it's time for our 545th Sleaze of the Week.
Well, we haven't been on the air in like 9 days, so we have a few. Right after we did the show on the 15th, story broke. I'm not sure if you guys know that Herschel Walker is actually running for office in the state of Georgia. I think he's running for Senate.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm not trying not to get too political here, but Herschel wanted to know that, some very religious people question, the idea of evolution. And he wanted to know he asked Lily during a campaign speech talking about religion and evolution, that if evolution actually happened and that human beings evolved from apes, then why do apes still exist?
Brilliant.
That Georgia education.
Yep.
Lack thereof.
And again, kind of going along with, doesn't matter. Like goes along with the Deshaun Watson. It doesn't matter what you're accused of or what you've done bad in your life. As long as you have talent, you're going to get money and people are going to want you. It was only a year ago. Just recently, Will Wade, the head basketball coach at LSU, was fired just before this tournament started, and that all stems from the FBI investigation into college basketball with all these AAU coaches and the shoe companies paying off recruits. Swept up in that whole mess about a year ago was Sean Miller, he coached at Arizona most recently. Mm-hmm. Right, so Arizona has a new coach this year. It's actually a Mark Few Gonzaga assistant has taken over Arizona and brought them to the Sweet 16 this evening. So Sean Miller was fired last year because of his involvement with that. Well, again, Sean Miller won a lot of games, and he won a lot of games at Xavier back in the day. Well, Xavier has brought him back in as their new head coach. And they're really and let's not forget, Xavier is a Jesuit university, supposed to hold up, but I love the statement that, we're thrilled to, what is it? Sean is an elite college basketball coach, a proven winner who understands the expectations, traditions, and values of Xavier. Like his values, like paying off players and cheating whenever possible.
Come on, Lou. It's all about forgiveness. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. Coach brought one to our attention. Former NFL player Mark Walton was arrested for armed robbery. Not the first time that Walton has run into. He was a fourth-round pick in 2018 by the Cincinnati Bengals. He was later played for the Dolphins, and he was cut over legal troubles. But yeah, he got picked up for armed robbery in Miami recently.
Miami, it counts as Florida man. Let's go.
Florida man. And then, I posted this one just yesterday. Conor McGregor, who has in the past had problems in Ireland with driving and been arrested, was arrested and had his car actually impounded for allegedly dangerous driving. It had his Bentley had his 170,000 pound, so that's probably $200,000 Bentley impounded on him for what is quoted as dangerous driving, but not the first time that he's been arrested for his driving abilities in his native Ireland. So
why not, right?
Kind of a slow week, you know.
Yeah.
The Sean Miller one is just, I put it up there just because I thought, like, in the same week that Deshaun Watson, as soon as we found out there weren't going to be criminal indictments, just 22 civil cases against him, which I do love that everybody's like, well, he's been exonerated. Yeah, sure. Anybody ever heard of OJ?
Well,
because criminal indictments being dropped, it means that nobody ever did anything wrong. So yeah, that's what I got for you. Did you guys have one too?
No, I didn't have one, but I was leaning towards Florida, man.
All right, Mark Walton.
Good old Mark Walton. Can't stay above the law. All right, so we go on here to our first MLB previews, and I will try to be as brief as possible. We're usually a little briefer than the NFL when we do this because it's just a little easier to be so. And also the difference is in football, we always go worst to first. In this, we're going first to worst. Which actually
I always forget that when I do my little sheets, Coach.
We can start at worst if you'd like.
No. The funny thing was I did the American League worst to first, and then I kind of, as I was going through, I thought I remembered that we did it the other way. So National League, I actually have first. So
yeah, we always start with the American League since all our teams are in the National League East, even though they're all three different teams. So we always end with National League. So we'll start in the American, of course, with the champions who lost the World Series to the Atlanta Braves last year, the Houston Astros. We already mentioned when we were talking about the players they lost, like Carlos Correa. Obviously this team still has a lot of positives. Obviously Verlander should be back, and he's expected to be the ace of this team. McCullers is the 2. Is he the one that's day-to-day right now?
Yes, I didn't have him on my list at all, so he must be hurt.
Yeah, he's day-to-day, but I think they're hoping he's ready for the start of the season. Obviously, they're a very good 1-2 punch, and even Valdez is the 3, is a solid 3. There's been different ways they're talking about what they're doing for the 4-5, but they have youngsters, Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy, I believe, as the guys up as of now that they expect to start in the 4th and 5th positions in that rotation. To help bolster the pen, they did bring Hector Nerisson from Philly, and Ryan Presley's still there to be the closer. But, yeah, they need to get healthy with their pitching staff and quick, especially since, we mentioned with Greinke, at least he was a good guy to have there. When Verlander went down, you still had a guy who was basically a 1. McCullers could be if he was healthy, but same problem right now, too. And Verlander, what is he, 40-something now? How old is Verlander?
He hasn't pitched in 2 years, I feel like. It's been,
at least 1
year.
He
didn't pitch at all last year.
No,
and I was wondering if he had pitched
year. I think he did the year before, but then I think he got injured during that season.
But he is pitching right now. He's been pitching in camp.
Uh-huh. He's healthy as of this moment.
He's 38.
39.
Well, no, he's 39. He just turned 39 last month.
Okay.
But I don't care. He's married to Kate Upton.
Yeah, that takes a few years off, I guess.
Well,
an ad year? I was going to say, I thought that made you younger.
Either way.
And then in that lineup, obviously, still you have studs there like Yordan Alvarez at DH, who was the ALCS MVP, had 33 home runs, 104 RBIs that is last year. Jose Altuve still there, who still had a solid year, 31 home runs, 83 RBIs. Michael Brantley, who had a nice average there, still there in left field. They have couple youngsters who are getting more playing time, like Chas McCormick, who did play a lot last year, had 50 RBIs, and of course the young stud they have in right field in Kyle Tucker, who hit 294 with 30 home runs and 92 RBIs last year. Bregman also still at third base. I guess shortstop's been the question, but I think they're going to start the rookie. They've been talking about the 24-year-old Jeremy Pena to be the starter at short. But again, it's still overall a solid team, Lou.
Yeah, I mean the two young. I mean, obviously, they lost Springer a couple years ago. They lost Correa this year, but they have two young studs. Alvarez might actually probably DH now, and Tucker definitely have taken up the reins of being in the middle of this lineup. Gurriel's at first still; he's getting a little old, but Bregman should be in the prime of his career. Altuve, like this is still a very, very dangerous lineup. I feel like 1 through 6, they're pretty awesome. The staff is what worries me, and they've always had a very deep bullpen. Obviously, bringing Neris in from Philly helps a lot to bolster the pen. Presley's always been a little. I feel like they've done a lot of committee work in the bullpen. I know they had a guy named Kendall Graveman they let go, and a guy named Yimi Garcia was in their bullpen they let go. So, the bullpens are always hard these days to keep together, and that's a lot of times the backbone of these teams. So it'll be interesting. I don't think they're just going to walk over this division like they have. There's been several years in the last 3 or 4 years they've just walked away with this division. No one's been able to really compete with them, and I question whether or not that's going to be the case. But you still got to think that they're the favorites. I think they won the division by. Well, I guess Seattle gave them a good run last year, but other than Seattle, nobody really competed with them very well.
No, not. Well, I mean, Oakland had a decent year. They weren't that many games behind.
Yeah, they won. The Astros won 95 games. Oakland won 86, and the Mariners won 90. The Mariners were the real surprise team.
But yeah, so I mean, but you mentioned Gurriel also moving up in age, but I mean, he was still a Golden Glover last year too. So, obviously, still a ton of talent. In Houston, so they should be competing regardless, and we'll see what happens with Houston. And then of course you mentioned Seattle. Obviously, Seattle finished second, going 90-72 with Scott Servais at the helm there. The amazing thing they did is they brought in the AL Cy Young Award winner, Robbie Ray from Toronto, the big lefty. He had a 2.84 ERA, 13-7 last year, but 248 strikeouts, and comes to Seattle to be the ace of the squad. Marco Gonzalez, the 2, Logan Gilbert, the youngster, the 3, the big-time youngster. Chris Flexen right now at 4, and Justice Sheffield, I believe, is at 5, the lefty. Didn't do a whole lot to their pen. Sadler is decent. The Steckenritter as the closer is pretty good. I know they didn't turn all the saves to him last year, and I think they're trying to lean that way this year because he only had 14 saves last year, though he did have a 2.00 ERA. But I mean, overall, it's solid. Obviously, bringing in a Cy Young winner is never a bad thing. But and then the big question, like usual, though, is going to be, can they produce the offense to hang in there? And they have some pieces, don't get me wrong. Mitch Haniger, the right fielder, who had 39 home runs and 100 RBIs last year. Obviously had a crazy good year for them. They brought in Jesse Winker from Cincinnati, the lefty in left field, who hit over 300 last year and 24 home runs himself. They brought in Eugenio Suarez at third base. He did have 31 home runs last year, but he hit below 200, so I'm sure they're hoping to be able to improve on that. And also, in more people they brought in Adam Frazier to play second base from San Diego. He hit over 300 last year as well, even though his power has decreased a bit as of late. But solid overall. It's just, I think, obviously you mentioned the 1-6 with Houston. I don't think you quite see that with Seattle.
No, but I like a lot of the pieces they got. I mean, I think Winker and Suarez from the Reds are big pieces to bring in. Frazier and J.P. Crawford make a great double play combo. I mean, I think they probably can hit higher than you think. They might hit 270 or 280. They both can steal a few bases. I like this lineup. And Robbie Ray is a huge pickup to lead that staff. Marco Gonzalez is a little better than you might think. Probably going to be a committee in the bullpen. I don't know if Steckenritter will last the year as the closer. They got a couple other guys, but I think this is a team on the rise.
Well, if you think they're on the rise, there's only one place to go, Lou. So finishing in third place last year at 86-76 was the Oakland Athletics, who turned to first-year manager for them this year, Mark Kotsay. Long-time Major League Baseball player, including having a stint in Miami, as I remember, than the Florida Marlins. The Athletics obviously lost their big first baseman, which in Olsen that we talked about, which is a huge loss. And I think right now slated to take his place would be Eric Thames from Washington, who only played in 41 games last year. So I know that position, as they've gone back and forth, has flexed. Lately, I think it's Thames that they think is going to have that position, but it's a bit of a downfall from Olsen. And overall, the rotation doesn't do anything to really catch your eye. I mean, Frankie Montas is as solid as the ace. Sean Manaea, I feel like he's been in the league for a long time at this point. And he's still decent, but he almost hit a 4 ERA last year, so it's gone up, and he's the number 2. I think Caprillion, Irvin, and Jeffries are supposed to finish up that rotation. But even with them, even with Lou Trevino, who is a solid closer, they're going to have to find runs, and I would love to know where they're coming from. I mean, because they do have a Gold Glover in their catcher in Sean Murphy, but Ramon Laureano, of course, is the one that had the ridiculous year for Oakland last year, Lou. Was it 49 home runs and 150 RBIs?
And I think he's hurt to start the season, isn't he?
I believe so. And obviously he was the main cog because you lit everybody else. There's just not a lot of production there from almost any position.
Oh no, I'm sorry. He's serving an 80-game PED suspension. That's why he's not going to be in the opening day lineup.
That's why he had 49 home runs.
Right.
The DH Seth Brown did have 20 home runs, but he also has a very low average. Tony Kemp is a decent hitter, but doesn't have much power and did not have many RBIs. I mean, and I think they're starting the youngster, the 23-year-old from Atlanta, Christian Patch, at center field.
Yeah, they picked him up in the trade for Olsen. The Braves thought the Braves gave him a shot right at the beginning of last year to be in the majors, and he didn't quite step up to the challenge and spent a good portion of the year in the minors. So he's going to get a shot here in Oakland because Oakland doesn't have much else. The other thing not only did they let Matt Olson, they let Matt Chapman, who was their middle of the lineup third baseman, go to Toronto right when all the lockout ended and all the movement started. So, you could argue they let their 2 best middle of the order guys go, and really haven't done anything. I mean, really, I know Oakland always seems to put something together after they do all this cost cutting, but and also, I think they had Sterling Marte on this team last year, and he's not on the team anymore. And Chris Bassett might have been their best starter last year, and he also left because of cost cutting. So I don't know. I mean, I never doubt Billy Beane, but it kind of feels like they've just done too much. The only good thing they did bring in, I think Piscotty came in. He might get a shot in the starting lineup. He's a veteran, been around for a lot of years. He might be who they got in the Chapman trade with Toronto. I wouldn't be surprised if he's batting 4th or 5th. But yeah, there's not a lot to like here. I'm not quite sure they're going to be able to pull off a 500 record.
I agree there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Oakland. Then you have the Los Angeles Angels, who I think almost every year we think is going to make that next step, and just obviously they have pieces. They have 2 American League MVPs on their team, but just haven't been able to get there. And obviously Ohtani is their ace. And Syndergaard they brought in from the Mets, who just hasn't played much, Lou. Noah Syndergaard they brought in to hopefully be their number 2. Then they have a bunch of youngsters like Patrick Sandoval, the lefty, at 3, Jose Suarez, the other lefty, at the 4 spot, and they brought in Michael Lorenzen from Cincinnati to be in the 5th spot. And they made trades and stuff too and pickups to try to bolster their pen with Ryan Tepera from the White Sox, Aaron Luke from the Mets. They do still have Raisel Iglesias, who's a solid closer as well, had 34 saves last year for the Angels. But this, as we know, I mean, this pitching staff definitely needed the overhaul because it's been one of their issues. Because, I mean, obviously Ohtani is a great hitter and, already mentioned the MVP last year and also won the Silver Slugger for the American League as well last year. And, of course, Mike Trout. I know he only played 36 games last year, but if he's healthy, those two are a pretty amazing pair. Outside of that, they didn't make a ton of moves, though. It's mostly what we saw. I mean, Jared Walsh at first did have a really good year last year, having 98 RBIs on 29 home runs. But then you look at everybody else, I mean, it's kind of a question of, is there enough in that lineup? I know Anthony Rendon's there and a couple other pieces, but anybody enough to just have the Angels be able to finally compete?
Yeah, when Rendon was hurt a good part of last year, and here's a name for you to remember. His name is Joe Adell, J-O, no E, Adell. He's 22 years old. I think he's probably, I don't know if he's going to start in right or left field, but he's going to start in one of the corner outfields, and he could be a possible Rookie of the Year candidate. I think he's ready to bust out. I actually think these guys have a chance. I think they should be right there. I mean, my opinion is this is kind of a three-team race in this division with these guys, the Mariners and the Astros. But I'd always say this every year about the Angels, that they're ready to break out. But my opinion is I do think the starting rotation's a little weak. But again, if Syndergaard could ever get back to, the Noah Syndergaard that,
Thor
was the Thor that everybody knew, then, this is a dangerous team.
And then, of course, coming in at the bottom last year, and I'm going to go through this team pretty quick, but the Texas Rangers, who finished 60-102 last year. They brought in John Gray from Colorado to be their ace, who has a stunning 4.59 ERA. And right behind him, Dane Dunning.
In Colorado, remember that is, altitude aided.
Well, and Dane Dunning right behind him with a stunning 4.51 ERA. Taylor Hearn, the lefty, behind him. They brought in Martin Perez from Boston to be the 4. And I think right now the 23-year-older AJ Alexy looking like he might take that 5 spot. Joe Barlow, it looks like he's going to be normal closer there now after having 11 saves last year and a 1.55 ERA. But getting to him could be an issue. But you did have, of course, they made one big move, though there's a whole lot of moves in this lineup. The big one is they brought in Golden Glover, Silver Slugger from Toronto, Marcus Semien, who had 45 home runs and 102 RBIs for the Blue Jays last year. They brought him in to play second. The other moves, they brought in Corey Seager from the Dodgers to play short.
Got like $180 million or some crazy amount of money.
They got Brad Miller, the lefty from Philadelphia, who's in left. They got Cole Calhoun, the lefty, to play right field. Mitch Garver from Minnesota at catcher. I mean, that's a whole lot of moves, and everybody else that's there, kind of young, kind of sticking around. I know Willie Calhoun's been there for a while, but the pitching worries me.
Adolis Garcia was a Rookie of the Year candidate in the American League. I think he finished second or third to the kid from who won AL Rookie of the Year last year. The kid in Cincinnati won in the National League, India.
It wasn't this division because I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I don't remember. When I wasn't in, but he was definitely in the running. He had a solid year, Adolis Garcia, so definitely getting better. I mean, you spend all that money on Semien and Seager, guys that are still pretty much in the prime of their careers. I feel like it's a team moving in the right direction. I actually don't think they're going to finish in last place, but I'm not quite sure if they got enough to compete with some of the other better teams in this division.
So,
hey Lou.
Yeah.
To answer your question, is it Randy Arozarena?
Yeah, with Tampa.
Yeah.
What was my question? Oh, Randy Arozarena won Rookie of the Year. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have the voting there, do you? It's okay.
Well,
I do not.
We're gonna make some picks.
let's make some picks. I know how much, D Nash, you talked way too much during this, so we got to get you to stop.
My God,
But
just yapping my mouth off.
why don't you give us?
Do anything but shut up.
Why don't you give us your AL West for this year?
Oh yeah, Garcia finished second with 63 with
See that he was second rookie of the year. So yep.
Yeah, and Rosarina had 124 overall votes. But to answer your question, I still have the Stros winning that division. So what we see, you still can't beat. Then in second place, I'm a little torn, right? Listening to you guys talk, and trying to figure out who I'm going to go with second place team. I am actually going to go ahead. Oh my God, Lou, you're right. We always tend to say that the Angels are going to make that jump, and they never do. And I'm tempted to make that pick again this year. But I'm going to go ahead and hold off on it. I'm going to take the Seattle Mariners to finish second, with the Angels finishing third. I'm going to take the Rangers fourth and the A's to come in fifth.
Lou?
Very, very similar. In fact, 3, 4, and 5, I'm exactly the same as D. But I'm going to take the Mariners to surprise everyone and win this division. Mariners winning the division, Astros second, but yeah, Angels pretty close in third. Rangers moving up, and the A's, dropping back to last place. Never a good thing to pick the Angels last or the A's last, but
I know, right?
Billy always figures something out, but I just think they got rid of too much talent. And by the way, just a real quick update: the underdogs are winning both games.
Wow.
Houston's up on Arizona 23-17, and Texas Tech is up on Duke 29-24.
So for me, I'm agreeing with D for Houston to win. I just think there's still too much, and I gotta think that Verlander still has something left in him, and if he could just stay healthy, obviously it's a game changer. And if him and McCullers can both stay healthy, it's the best 1-2 in this division. And there's a lot of ifs that I just said, but for now, that's where I'm rolling. My number 2, and I'm going to go ahead and take that chance again. I'm going to say if Mike Trout can stay healthy and you have him and Ohtani in this lineup all season, that the Angels under Joe Madden going into his third year can take this team to compete and finish second in this division. And we'll see if they compete for the wild card or not. But there's a solid chance because I know it's an extended wild card. That's still this year, right, Lou?
Yeah, so there'll be 12 teams, so 3 division winners and 3 wild cards will make the playoffs.
So then I have the Mariners at 3. I actually have Oakland at 4 because, again, I think a surprise to us might be them finishing 4th. And I think for a while maybe they'll compete surprisingly, but I just think they're going to end up falling off because they just don't have I think they have better pitching, though, than Texas. And that's the big thing that worries me with Texas, which is why I have the Rangers still finishing in 5th this year. So then we can talk about the National League. And, of course, it all starts with the team that lost to the second-place team in the divisional series, the San Francisco Giants. And, of course, the Giants did lose their longtime catcher in Buster Posey, who decided to retire this offseason. But they do have Gabe Kapler, who was the National League Manager of the Year last year for the Giants, going into his 3rd season. Logan Webb, the ace there, he went 11-3 with a 3.03 ERA. They did also make the big move and brought in Carlos Rodon from the White Sox to be the number 2 guy, who went 13-5 at a 2.37 ERA. Anthony Descalfini, is a solid pitcher as well at 3. Alex Wood has been around for a while, but has been decent, is the 4, and they brought in Alex Cobb from the Angels to be their 5. So overall, a solid rotation still. They do have their 24-year-older. I think that they're throwing in to be the full-time closer now in Camilo Duvall, who had only 3 saves last year, but didn't get a whole lot of chances. And I think he has taken over that spot, or they're expecting him to do so. But, I mean, you do still have some hitting pieces in here, even with Buster moving on. Obviously, Brandon Belt still there, who had 29 home runs last year and just shy of 60 RBIs. Brandon Crawford, who won the Gold Glove, also had 24 home runs and 90 RBIs. Those guys have been long-time Giants. Evan Longoria is still there, who did not play, I think, the entire season last year. But Longoria, if he can bounce back a bit, that would help. Yastrzemski's got to see the ball a little better and hit for average a little bit more, but he still put up 71 RBIs last year. They brought in Jock Peterson, who was with Atlanta last season, who had 61 RBIs and 18 home runs. And now we're talking DH2 for the National League, who it looks like Darren Ruff. It might just be their DH to start the season. But then, of course, the big question, who's taking over at catcher? I know Joey Bart has been the guy they've been talking about, but it's a big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, they got two young guys to pay attention to in this Giant outfield. Are Lamont Wade, who's a good chance he's going to hit cleanup, and Steven Duger. And I know you said Darren Ruff might be DH. They also picked up Jock Peterson from the Braves.
No, I mentioned Jock.
Off-season. You mentioned him, so I don't know if he will mix into the outfield and or.
He's supposed to be starting in left.
Yeah, because they also have the Yastrzemski kid. So
he's moving to center.
Well, I don't know where that puts maybe Duger's on the bench then, because Wade is definitely in the outfield.
Yeah, Wade's slated to start in right.
Which would mean Duger's on the bench. So maybe Duger's on the bench, or
maybe he'll play some DH.
Or well, he's a better defender than Peterson. I mean, what I saw had Ruff on the bench, but I mean, I'm sure. I mean, lineups change every day. But it is still, I mean, a very good team. They won They won more games than anybody else in all of Major League Baseball last year. 107 games. They had a spectacular playoff series with the Dodgers. That went to the last game. And picking up Rodon as a number 2 starter is amazing. So the pen it'll be interesting to see how the bullpen shakes out. They kind of did it by committee anyways last year with Tyler Rogers and Jake McGee splitting it. And I know they're both listed to be setup guys. So bullpens are always a little fluid. But this is definitely a team that's going to compete with LA and San Diego.
And they're going to have to, because you mentioned they had the best record in baseball. But right behind them, the Dodgers, only one game off at 106-56, lost to Atlanta in the NLCS last year. Dave Roberts entering his 7th season here with the Dodgers as at the helm. They have Walker Buehler as their ace, and for good reason. I mean, he went 16-4 last year, 2.47 ERA and 212 strikeouts. Originally, their 2 and 3 was changed up a little bit till they did re-sign Clayton Kershaw to that 1-year deal. So the Claw now, I think, takes over the 2 spot for the Dodgers. Julio Urias, who's solid as well, as the 3. Trevor Bauer at the 4, and I think right now Andrew Heaney, that they brought in from the Yankees, the lefty, is slated to be at the number 5 spot. They tried to help their pen a little too. They brought in Daniel Hudson from San Diego. And right now, I know there's no deal with the closer as well. And right now they have Blake Treinen slated to be their closer going into next season, though.
Yeah, because Kenley signed with the Braves.
Right. I mean, Treinen's ERA was great. It was 1.99. He just didn't save all that much. He did have 7 saves though last year.
Well, because of Kenley Jensen being there.
Right.
But he led all of Major League Baseball like 3 years ago when he was with the A's as a closer. So he definitely has quite a bit of closer experience. And Hudson also. Hudson was a closer he ended the World Series for the Nationals in 2019. So they definitely have guys with closing experience.
But then you talk about a scary lineup, Lou, and pretty much from 1 to 9, this lineup is crazy because you have Freddie Freeman, of course, that they brought in to play first base, but giving him a whole lot of money. He hit 300 at 31 home runs and 83 RBIs last year. Chris Taylor's at second, who had 20 home runs and 73 RBIs last year. Justin Turner at third had 27 home runs and 87 RBIs. Trey Turner, who hit 328 with 28 home runs and 77 RBIs at short. AJ Pollock, who had 21 home runs and 69 RBIs in left, hit 297. Cody Bellinger, who did get hurt last year, did not hit all that. Well, he hit all right. Just average was really low when he was there, but again, he did get injured. Mookie Betts, obviously still there, 23 home runs, 58 RBIs last year. Their catcher, Will Smith, had 25 home runs and 76 RBIs. And right now slated to DH would be Max Muncy, who, had 36 home runs and 94 RBIs last year. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's very scary. I mean, there's a good chance that AJ Pollock is your number 9 hitter.
Yeah.
How freaking scary is that?
Ridiculously.
Yeah. And they can move guys around because, Muncy can DH. He can play second. He can play first. Chris Taylor can play second. He can play, I think, all 3 outfield positions. Bellinger can play pretty much all 3 outfield positions and play first. Pollock can play the outfield. That's the other thing, that Mookie can play different positions in the outfield. That's the thing that, Dave Roberts really likes to do. He likes to move guys around the field.
And with that DH, you could get some rest out of some of your guys too.
Yep. I'm a little worried about outside. 3 outstanding pitchers with Buehler, Kershaw, and Urias at the top. I don't know a lot about Andrew Heaney or Tyler Anderson, which is what I got listed as 4 and 5. Not quite sure about them, but you still, that lineup, you figure you can pretty much pencil in 90 games. Which is scary.
But just quick question, fellas. Wow, hey, D-Nash is talking. Just a quick question. Since I'm not necessarily that entrenched in baseball strategy, how often, say like if a couple of players are having like a couple of cold weeks, would a manager decide to change a lineup, the batting lineup throughout a season, just to go ahead and I guess try to get a little continuity going in that 4, 5, and 6 spot?
I think guys do it all the time. I don't know. Like, there are certain guys. I think it depends on the players you're moving around. Some players I don't think care where they hit, and then some guys get very set in their ways and like to hit in the same spot in the lineup every day.
Yeah, that was what I was alluding to. Yeah, I was wondering what that type of situation would be like, and potentially in this situation where the Dodgers have a lot of bats going into that lineup right now.
Yeah, I think even in the playoffs, I feel like the Dodgers move guys around quite often. So I think it's in Robert's DNA to move people around quite often. Okay. So I would assume his guys are probably used to getting moved in the lineup. Certainly guys like Turner and Taylor are used to getting moved around. Justin Turner and Muncy are definitely used to me. I don't know, a guy like Freddie probably hit the same spot in Atlanta's lineup almost all the year, so we'll see how he adapts, but Freddie's a pro.
So let's move on to the 3 other teams who probably won't take nearly as long. But, the Padres, who have been a team that we also, much like, we talked about with the Angels, we've talked about the Padres and taking the next step. Hasn't quite happened yet either. And they got in a new manager as well. They brought in Bob Melvin to take over the helm in San Diego. Joe Musgrove is the one there who went 11-9, 3.18 ERA, which is solid, but the rest of the rotation's interesting. They do have Yu Darvish as the 2, but Darvish has not done nearly what he did early in his career. Had an over 4 ERA last year. Only went 8-11. Blake Snell, who also just seems like he's been around forever, is the 3. Mike Clevenger at 4. Nick Martinez at 5. They didn't really do much to their pen. I know Craig Stammen, who's been there, along with Pierce Johnson and others, are all there. And their closer is at least slated to be right now, a 31-year-old rookie in Roberto Suarez. That's all I got for you. So then,
it's funny about this team's bullpen because I follow a couple different websites looking at. I mean, there's a chance. I mean, I saw upwards of 4 different guys listed as possibilities for closer. Like, you want to talk about closer by committee? This San Diego probably is the prototype for closer by committee. I don't think anybody's really got that job. There's probably 2 or 3 other guys besides Suarez that are going to get a shot at closing.
Right.
Which is sometimes isn't a bad thing. I mean, look at the Rays. The Rays hardly ever have a set closer, and I mean they only win division after division title. So,
well, and until recently too, they didn't. They didn't make any big moves lineup wise either. And obviously, the big thing for San Diego is that their star player is going to be out. I think at least 3 months at this place, and Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah,
he had a fractured wrist that is just not in good shape. And that's your silver slugger from this team, too, that had 42 home runs and 97 RBIs last year, and he's going to be gone for months. Obviously, Manny Machado still had a great year with 106 RBIs and 28 home runs last year. Players like Trent Grisham and Will Myers hitting in the 60 RBI limit, along with Eric Hosmer, who's also been in this league, which seems like forever. But they traded, not traded, but they did for Luke Voigt from New York, who right now is slated to be their DH. So that's exciting. Voigt, who had the worst season he's ever had as a Yankee last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what a new change of scenery does for Voigt, and playing in a lineup with guys like Machado and Hosmer and Will Meyer. It's still a pretty dangerous lineup, even without Fernando. Obviously, without him, it'd be hard for them to obviously compete with the Giants and Dodgers. I think for a whole season. I mean, if he's not going to be back until June or July to like the All-Star break, but still, I mean, they put the Padres have spent money. You get guys like Snell and Darvish and Musgrove, excuse me, in this rotation. I mean, they're certainly better than the Rockies and Diamondbacks. The question is whether they will have enough to compete with the hang with the Dodgers and Giants until Tatis comes back.
Right. And then you have the Colorado Rockies, who finished 4th in this division last year at 74 and 87. Bud Black going into 6 years the manager here. I mean, obviously we mentioned the big Chris Bryant move where they picked him up from San Francisco, who had 25 home runs and 73 RBIs. And Jose Iglesias from Boston they brought in, who's a solid average guy but never a home run guy. But he's in Colorado, so I guess he'll hit like 30 now. Charlie Blackmon's still there, who's been there for a long time. I mean, I could go through this team, but nothing am I thrilled about Colorado, Lou. I mean, Chris Bryant.
We already talked about Chris Bryant. He's the biggest thing, and Blackmon's still there. But
the whole rotation, even under Colorado standards, is below what it normally had been. German Marquez and Kyle Freeland is the 1-2, both with, again, well over a 4.0 ERA. Say whatever you will, but Freeland, even as number 2, only had 105 strikeouts last year. Right now, I guess Santazella is supposed to be the 3, Gomber the 4. They brought in Chad Kuhl from Pittsburgh to be the 5, and they brought in Alex Colomb from Minnesota to be their closer if they can ever get to him. Anyways, moving right along.
Both of these teams we could probably swing through pretty fast.
And with Arizona, again, I mean, much like I said, the crazy part to me is this is a team that need a lot of help, and they didn't do much. They went 52 and 110 last year. Madison Bumgarner still the ace here after he went 7-10 last season. Zach Gallen is the 2 who went 4-10 last season. Merrill Kelly, Luke Weaver there. Zach Davies, they brought from the Cubs, should factor into the rotation as well. They didn't do much to their pen, and they really needed to, other than, of course, bringing in a great closer, don't get me wrong. They brought in Mark Melancone, who was with San Diego, who had 39 saves last year. But again, you have to get to the guy for the closer to matter. Bat-wise, I mean, they have Kettle Mart, who's a solid base hitter. They don't have any huge RBI guys. David Peralta was pretty good last year. And they have a guy who's starting at DH, at least as of right now, and his name is Seth Beer, so that's fun. But I don't know, Lou.
No, I got nothing for you. I mean, I don't even know who the number. I mean, I got the number 3 hitter is a guy named Dalton Varsho. Who the frick
The
is
center
that?
fielder.
Yeah, well, I see that, but I don't know who he
had
is.
246 with 11 home runs last season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Peralta's been there forever. I mean, he's a name, and Kettle Marte's a name only because of his brother Sterling. But yeah, this is a bad team. I mean, they won 52 games last year. I mean, they were bad teams in Major League Baseball team last year. You know, there was no team worse than the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, there's a big.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. The Baltimore Orioles won 52 games also. So
there's a big deference when it comes to this league, this division that is. So Lou, what's going on with your division?
Well, not surprisingly, I got the Dodgers first. I want to put, you know what, I'm gonna put the Padres second, even mostly just because I hate the Giants. But that's probably not smart. I probably should put the Giants second, the Padres third. And I'll put Rockies 4 and D-backs 5th, only because the D-backs are just horrible. I mean, they might finish in front of the Rockies, but both those teams will be lucky to win 70 games. They'll be down in the 65 to 60 game area.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of agreement there. I mean, I have the Dodgers also. I just think I think in all of baseball, you're not going to find a lineup that's anything compared to this. And if their pitching can at least stay healthy, I know Kershaw is getting up there in age, which is why there was even question if they were going to bring him back. But he doesn't have to be the ace anymore, so we'll see. But I think overall, especially lineup-wise, and at least top 2-3 pitchers, they can compete with San Francisco's top couple pitchers. But yeah, the lineup is just scary. Unlike you, because I don't particularly hate the Giants, I'm having the Giants finishing second. Just because, again, overall, I think those are the top 2 teams in this division still. I just think the Dodgers overtake them this year. 3, I still have San Diego in that position. And I really like to usually swap the bottom 2, but I'm agreeing with you there just because, I mean, they're not good teams, but one plays at least in a place where players will put up numbers, and at least Colorado did something to try to help themselves out with like Chris Bryant and Jose Iglesias. But yeah, 4-5, Colorado 4, Arizona 5. D?
Yeah, Coach copied off my paper. Dodgers, G Unit, the Daddies, the Rockies, and the basement team. Yeah.
The D-backs.
Yeah, I mean,
D-backs.
It's a pretty easy division to figure out. But who knows? I mean, the Giants could shock the world 2 years in a row and take this division. I mean, that was a phenomenal race. And they won 106 and 105 games. I think that was the most a first and second place team had ever won in the history of the league. So it could happen again.
Well, when the bottom of your division's that bad.
That helps too. Yeah, it helps that they get to play that many games against the Rockies and Diamondbacks.
Wait a minute, doesn't the schedule change, or is it proposed?
No, that's the proposal is to.
Proposed.
Yeah, I think, and if it does, it's not going to happen. It won't happen this year because the schedule is already set. But
yeah,
I talked about that last when we were talking all the changes that they're talking about.
That's right. That was you that talked about that.
Yeah, they're talking about everybody instead of just having like 5 or 6 interdivisional teams that you play a season, you'd literally play all 15 teams in the other interleague games. I'm sorry, not interdivision. And because of that, to make up the space on your schedule, you would get rid of division games.
Yeah.
Because now you play everybody 19 times, and you play over 80 games inside your division. That half your schedule. So yeah, and then when the Padres tanked at the end of the season, that also helped the Dodgers and Giants. Not pad, but definitely increase theirs.
So next week will be the Central Division, and then as you said, the East. And maybe we'll just wait a couple weeks in to do the playoff picks until the NFL non-events go away. But let's talk about last week's picks. We had the first four games that we picked. The first one was the Wright State-Bryant game. Wright State won 93-82, so D. Nash got that one correct. Then we had the Notre Dame-Rutgers matchup. Notre Dame won 89-87 and was a really good game, and I actually had Notre Dame winning. I was the only one with Notre Dame. Then we had the NIT, 2 first-round matchups. One was St. Bonaventure versus Colorado. The Bonnies won 76-68. D. Nash and I both got that one correct. Then our first unanimous pick of the week, we all took Washington State to win, who won 63-50. So we were correct there. Then we went to the NCAA women's bracket for the first four. And in the first four, the first matchup, we all picked Howard, who did win 55-51. And that made us 2-0 this week as we up our percentage on unanimous picks this season.
Thank you, Coach Ty.
Then also from that, we had the Dayton-DePaul matchup. Dayton won 88-57. Lou and I had that one correct. D, the only one that had DePaul. Then we had Longwood against Mount St. Mary's. Longwood won 74-70. Lou and D both got that one. Murray State took on Florida State in what turns out to be Sue Samaro's last game at the helm with Florida State, because Missouri State downed them 61-50. You both had that correct. Then in the NBA, we had the Jazz versus the Bulls. The Jazz won 125-110. D. Nash and myself had that one correct. And then the last matchup was the Mavericks versus the Sixers, and the Sixers won 111-101. Lou was the only one with that one correct on the week, which meant that brought us to D. Nash with the win. D had 7 correct on the week. Lou and I both had 6 correct. None of us took Chase Briscoe, who was the one that actually won the race last week. But
is he one of the Briscoes?
He's one of the Briscoes. I don't know if he has his tag team title right now or not, but yeah. So Lou did take the tiebreaker over me by winning the tiebreaker this week overall. He had Chase Elliott, who finished 6th. None of us had a top 5 overall, where D had Brad Keselowski, who finished 12th. I had Kevin Harvick, who finished 21st. So that was that. So on the season now, D not only takes the lead with 10 points to my 8 to Lou's 4, he also has a solid lead in overall percentage with 54.2% of his picks correct. Lou's still below 50, but not by much at 59-61 on his picks on the season. And we are 14-6, which means we have 70% of our unanimous picks correct into the year so far. So D, you got the win last week, and we're going to make our one pick that we're actually using the odds for. So what I did is I went to the tournament and I took 2 games that none of us had picked. So to make sure that we all did not have those teams in there, and it was only 2 that we did not have in the Sweet 16 this matchup. So the first matchup we're going to take is actually going to have the spread, because I kind of had a feeling we all would have gone the same way. So I figured, why not throw the spread in? And this is the one we mentioned earlier, the St. Peter's Peacocks, the number 15 seed. They're taking on the 3 seed, Purdue Boilermakers, Friday, 7:09 p.m. at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Purdue is favored by 12.5 points. D. Nash.
Well, if my math is correct, and I saw the numbers correct, it looks as though that Purdue has won their 2 tournament games by average of 11 points. Not quite 12.5. But I think the Peacock magic wears thin, like when the Cosby Show left NBC. So I'm going to take the Boilermakers.
Lou.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Coach. If we had picked it straight up, we'd all be picking Purdue. Just the 12.5 points. So, 2 number 15 seeds have made the Sweet 16, but neither of them got past this round, I believe. I'm going Jersey strong, man. St. Peter's to cover.
Okay.
And crazy enough, I'm going to leave D. Nash on a Boilermakers Island.
No.
Wow.
I don't think St. Peter's wins, but They definitely got something going and had some big wins. I think they at least keep this one close, where people get maybe worried for Purdue until Purdue pulls ahead by a bit. But I think 12.5 might be too much. So on that instance, I'm going to take St. Peter's as well. So then our other pick is from the Midwest, where the number 11 Iowa State Cyclones are taking on the number 10 Miami Hurricanes, Friday, 9:59 p.m. at the United Center in Chicago. Lou.
Yeah, I'm going Canes. Going ACC Brethren all the way.
It pains me, but I'm agreeing with you. I think the Hurricanes are just playing that good right now. I'm going to take them to knock off Iowa State. D?
Iowa State.
Which means if that means anything with how our picks have gone, one of those is going to go your way.
Okay.
By the way, can we talk about the wind-related, matchup we have there? We have Cyclones versus Hurricanes.
Cyclones and the Hurricanes, yeah.
It's a great matchup. So then from the Sweet 16 of women's college basketball, I gave us 4 games to choose from. I threw in a couple Cinderellas there as well because we're seeing a little bit more of that with the women's tournament. I don't know if it has anything to do with them being March Madness this year as well or not. But we'll see how this plays out. And we're going to start with the matchup in Spokane in that bracket. We got the number 4 Maryland Terrapins taking on the number 1 Stanford Cardinal, Friday, 9:30 at the Spokane Arena. I usually don't go to put number 1 seeds in these. Maryland's been playing very well, but again, the women's tournament, as we mentioned in the past, usually a little different. We have seen some of the higher seeds fall. There's been a couple 2 seeds that have fallen, which is why we have 2 10 seeds in our picks this week. But it's hard for me to think that the Cardinal don't pull this one off. So I will take Stanford. D.
Sorry, Testudo. Taking the trees.
Lou.
I feel like we're going to have a few unanimous in our women's picks here.
All right, so you're rolling with Stanford. All right, so then our 4th pick of the week is from the Greensboro bracket, and this is where the number 10 Creighton Blue Jays are taking on the number 3 Iowa State Cyclones, Friday, 9:30 at the Greensboro Coliseum. D.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Lou. I think we're going to go ahead and end up probably taking the higher seed unless someone surprises us. I'm going to go ahead and take Iowa State, right? Yeah.
Lou?
You know what? I'm taking Creighton on this one.
All right.
They had a huge upset. Their best player over Iowa. Their best players in Iowa transfer.
Yeah.
Give me the Blue Jays to beat both, to break hearts in Iowa 2 weeks in a row.
2 times.
Blue Jays, if they fly into a cyclone, it's not a pretty sight. I was actually I kind of had Creighton penciled in because I thought you both would take Iowa State. I do think they have a decent shot, but I'll take Iowa State to keep running though. I think they're solid, and Creighton's Cinderella run will end here. So then, Lou, we go to the Bridgeport bracket with number 3 Indiana versus number 2 UConn, Saturday 2 p.m. at the Total Mortgage Arena.
Huskies are rolling.
Yeah, I mean, UConn had issues they were running into pre-tournament, but it sure seems like they've got it all together. It's usually hard to go against that women's team, too. Give me UConn. D?
Taking that wolf again. I'm going to go ahead and take Indiana.
All right. So then our 6th pick of the week comes from the Wichita bracket with another Cinderella in the South Dakota Coyotes taking on the Michigan Wolverines. This one Saturday, 6:30 at the Intrust Bank Arena. And you know what? This is another team you mentioned with Creighton who's had a heck of a run. South Dakota having a heck of a run. Kind of an unseen team, too, coming from where they came from. Had a great year going 29-5. I'm going to go ahead and say both Wolverine teams lose in the Sweet 16. Give me South Dakota. D.
Now, I'm not condoning animal fights, but who do you think will win in a fight between a coyote and a wolverine?
Wolverine.
What about you, Coach?
The Coyote might be a little fast. I don't know. It'd be a good matchup.
No, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm leaning towards the Lady Wolverines.
Lou.
I am going to go Wolverines as well. We're going to leave you on the upset island there, Coach.
Give me the Coyotes. All right, so our 7th pick comes from the NBA. So, D. Nash, we have the Dallas Mavericks at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Friday, 8 p.m. at the Target Center.
Yeah, you made a minor mistake on the lineup. You currently have Minnesota at 6. They're currently 7th. But that's not going to stop me from taking the T-Wolves. I'm taking them.
That was as of yesterday, probably.
Yeah, I know. There's been a lot of fluctuation going on in both conferences, actually. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how seedings go once we get to the end of the regular season.
Lou.
I'm going Mavericks. I'm going to leave this one open for you, Coach.
I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but once again, I'm leaving D. Nash on an island.
No.
Give me the Mavs. So the 8th pick of this week in our pillow fight from the NBA, we got the Sacramento Kings traveling to the Orlando Magic, 7 p.m. at the Amway Center on Saturday. Lou.
Yeah, wow, pillow fights. Give me the Kings, actually. I'm going Road Warrior in these NBA games.
I know the Magic are absolutely horrible, but it's a long travel. The Magic can do something, right? Pull off a little magic. Yeah, it's a terrible matchup. Give me the Magic. D?
Long trip, and in recent games, the Magic actually looked like they've been competitive. I'm going to take Orlando.
So then our 9th pick of this week is the Milwaukee Bucks at the Memphis Grizzlies, Saturday night, 8 p.m. at the FedEx Forum. This one could be a lot of fun. The Bucks starting to roll lately, but the Grizz, I mean, obviously have looked good all year. Give me the Bucks. D.
Ja may or may not be back for the Grizz, but Brook Lopez is. I'm gonna take the Bucks.
Lou.
Only our second unanimous. I'm going Bucks.
Well, it's looking good for the Bucks then as we go this year. All right, so our 10th pick and our final pick of the week, D-Nash, Chicago Bulls at the Cleveland Cavaliers, Saturday, 8 p.m. at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
Yeah, the Bulls, who were at one point in time leading the conference, have now dropped down to what the 5th spot, 6th spot, and they've been on an interesting free fall. I'm gonna take the Cavs actually.
Lou.
Yeah, I'm going Cavs as well. I'm not too high on the Bulls right now.
That's fine. I'll go ahead and take the Bulls to make it at least interesting. So our tiebreaker this week comes from NASCAR once again, is the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Lou, you get to go first.
Oh, nice. Well, he won for me last week. Let's see how Chase Elliott's luck runs for me this week.
I got an upset pick for you guys. You ready for this one? From NASCAR.
Right.
I don't do it often. Give me Tyler Reddick this week in NASCAR. By the way, if he can win, this is a dude that has I think it's like a plus 3,000 in his in the betting right now. So no, I'm not betting on this, but go Tyler Reddick.
I mean, if you were, it's your business, but you know.
I'm not.
Is it JJ's brother?
That's what I was thinking.
He's shooting threes from the car.
Might as well, right? But I will be taking Joey Logano since Lou took my other choice.
There you go. Those are our 10 picks for the week. And well, I mean, I know there was so much talk early on, so I guess we just don't have time once again. Eventually I'll get to those quarterbacks, but it's okay.
One day.
It's okay. So.
But before we go, the Dogs are still leading in both of those games.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And right now also in a I know most people probably don't care about it quite as much, but a very big World Cup qualifying match in the CONCACAF between United States and Mexico. Still tied at 0 right now after halftime in the 52nd minute, but it's been an ugly game. There's 4 yellow cards that have come out already in just the first half. But again, these are the 2 biggest rivals in the CONCACAF as well, so not a big surprise there, but it's a big game, especially for the United States, who, if they lose this, it puts them in a place where they have a shot to miss a second World Cup in a row.
Did you see that Italy lost to North Macedonia yesterday and will miss the World Cup for the second time in a row?
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, go U.S.
I'm just shocked that this is South Macedonia, but
yeah, I don't know where North Macedonia is, or
compared to East and West Macedonia. Well, they always say usually you don't pick directional Macedonias, but what do I know?
Exactly.
Thank you for listening and watching, everybody. We are SLZE Sports, SLZE Sports.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at SLZE Sports every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. right here on Facebook Live. And this week, I'm going to go out on something here. If you remember, just a few weeks ago, I brought up, not even a few weeks ago, it was a little before that, I brought up the whole Cody Rhodes as a rumor going on to the WWE. And at least all signs or reports are saying that he is signed. They just don't know exactly when he's going to show up yet, whether it's going to be WrestleMania or right before. Well, I got another possible surprise that could happen at WrestleMania for you. And this is another rumor I'm putting out there because it's an interesting one. So I'm going to go out on his song that he had in the WWE. So everyone, enjoy it. But thank you, everybody, for listening and watching again. I'm Coach Scotty for Sweet Lou, for D Nash. We're SLZE Sports. Have a good night.